What is going on, Michigan fans? Clayton Sayfie here with EJ Holland from the Wolverine.com. Check our content out over there. You can use the promo code BLUE60 for 2 months of premium access for free. You get access to our message board with thousands of Michigan fans and our staff. But EJ, this is the Wolverine Recruiting Show. We'll get into several topics, and first one will be quite obvious. The Jim Harbaugh situation and how it's impacting recruiting. We'll get to a top recruit in his top list later on. Michigan making the cut there. But we'll start with the Jim Harbaugh uncertainty, where it's basically dragging out. There's rumors basically by the hour here and there. But, is he going to sign an extension? Is he going to not sign an extension? Is he going to look to the NFL? Nobody actually knows at this point. But basically, how do you see it playing out on the recruiting trail when it comes to the kids that Michigan already has in the fold, with some of the signees, I guess, and then some of the kids that they're starting to or continuing to target here going forward when you look at the end of the 2021 cycle and then the beginning of the 2022 cycle?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with the signees and the commits, there's question marks, as far as how long is Harbaugh going to be at Michigan? Is he going to sign the extension? Is he not going to sign the extension? Which assistants are going to be at Michigan? Which ones are going to have their contracts expire and no longer be around? It's a tough time for them. It's actually pretty surprising that the 2021 class really stayed together like it did. And, the buzz is still that they're confident in their decisions. I mean, the early enrollees are set to get on campus here next weekend. So I think right now everybody is happy but hesitant at the same time. When you look at the 2022 class, there's a handful of early commits, and obviously other schools are already starting to reach out to those guys. More importantly, the big 2022 targets, I think it's affecting the most guys like Damani Jackson and Will Johnson, who are A and B at the top of the recruiting board. Um, with those guys, they have a lot of viable options, including Ohio State and USC, that are making strong runs with both. Will just recently visited Ohio State and is getting out to USC. USC's built up a lot of recent momentum with Damani, and Ohio State is right up there with Damani as well. So those two guys have talked about teaming up with each other at the next level, and the more this goes on, the less optimistic I become, with Michigan landing one or both of them. The fact of the matter is that there's no defensive coordinator. It's not all about Harbaugh's extension. There's no defensive coordinator. These guys don't know who the defensive coordinator will be. And especially with Will, who's looking to make an early commitment and be a leader for his class, I think that affects this whole situation, not only Harbaugh's extension, but not having a coordinator in place really, really affects those top tier guys to have other options.
Yeah, so from a perspective of let's say the Michigan staff and what they're doing right now in terms of recruiting, because and we've reported it, and yourself as well as Chris Ballas, our senior editor at the Wolverine.com, are talking about basically how a lot of people are in limbo right now. The players, well, they're not, totally in the dark as to, what exactly is going on with the program. And you've reported that, these guys have their playbooks, the early enrollees, the signees. Things are still happening football wise, whether or not it's virtual or in person, but things are kind of at a standstill at this point in a lot of ways. I guess, how is that kind of impacting the way that the Michigan coaches and the Michigan staff are going about not only recruiting the end of the 2021 cycle, recruiting those big targets in 2022, but then also looking at the transfer portal, because that's a huge thing in Michigan. And Jim Harbaugh has said publicly that they do want to look at that option this offseason to fill a couple holes on the roster as well.
Well, I was told this week that Michigan has interest in adding defensive tackles as well as some potential guys in the secondary, and they're really kind of handcuffed right now because they're waiting to see who the defensive coordinator is going to be. They don't want to add a bunch of guys that the defensive coordinator deems as not scheme fits or guys he doesn't personally like. So there's no big decision maker there. for the pieces that they want to add in the transfer portal. It doesn't seem like they have a ton of interest in offensive guys. Maybe if a big time receiver, comes open, or an extra offensive lineman, but the priorities right now for the portal are defensive tackle, and followed by defensive back. And so they can't really make decisions on those players because there's no defensive coordinator to give the green light. And so they're tracking guys, they're monitoring who's in the portal, but guys are flying in and out of the portal. You had Antonio Shelton, Penn State defensive tackle, who Michigan tracked and really liked a lot, and he just ended up at Florida. So I mean, guys are flying off left and right. They were monitoring a defensive tackle who was at Duke, who signed with Penn State a couple of days later. So it's just it hurts them from a portal standpoint, and then from an overall recruiting standpoint, because there's no defensive coordinator. You even current targets, even big time guys like Joshua Burnham or Sebastian Cheeks, guys who are elite guys, top 250 guys. You don't know what the scheme's going to be, how those guys would fit into the new scheme, if the new defensive coordinator is really going to make those guys top priorities. I mean, they have all the talent in the world, obviously, but just using those two as an examples of guys that could play multiple roles. I mean, it's hard to really pitch them with no defensive coordinator. And then on the offensive end, there's been talk about adding an offensive coordinator, maybe giving a co-spot to Gaddis. Who knows what's going to happen with that situation? I think all of recruiting is basically on hold. You have three assistants that are, really recruiting hard all the time, and that's Sharon Moore, Ed Warner, and Brian Jean Mary. But I mean, it's really tough to go after guys, or to make guys priorities when there's so much, not only uncertainty with their head coach, but with coordinators.
Yeah, so basically, and we know that they're still kind of operating, and Jim Harbaugh's kind of operating as the head coach and kind of looking for, like you said, possibly an offensive coordinator to add. Obviously, has to add a defensive coordinator. So things are kind of on pause in that way. But the recruits they are in contact with, I guess. What have you heard the message has been from Jim Harbaugh or the assistant coaches on exactly what is going to happen? Because you get on the phone with somebody, everyone sees the rumors swirling. Everyone is reading everything. I guess the people on our message board and stuff are a little more obsessed in a good way than the average fan. But you look on Twitter. I scroll Twitter. And every time I do, somebody is saying like, "Oh, it's Jim Harbaugh contract extension day again. What's going to happen?" So basically, the noise is out there. They have to hear it. So these kids are probably asking some questions, rightfully so, because they want to know the future of the program. What's the message coming out of Schembechler Hall?
The message has been the same for the last month. It's going to get done soon. Jim Harbaugh has said he fully intends on being at Michigan, and that's about it. I mean, though, that's what they're telling recruits. Jim Harbaugh intends to be at Michigan. It's going to get done soon. It hasn't gotten done. It's supposed to be Monday, then Tuesday. We're recording this on Thursday. And now Ballas knows what it's like to cover George Rooks and Andrew Kendall, because these arbitrary dates have no meaning. And I think recruits, like I said at the beginning of the show, are still happy with their decision. It's still the University of Michigan, the tradition, the history, the academics. It's still Michigan, but you do have to start being a little wary with everything that's being put out on social media. I had one signee tell me yesterday, I got on social media and looked up Jim Harbaugh, and I had to log off so I wouldn't worry myself. So that's kind of how I feel like all the signees and commits in the 2022 class are feeling right now.
Yeah, and he can tell you, and an assistant coach can tell you all they want what's going to happen, but you can put an end to it, by actually signing. Those signees know that more than anybody. They're just somebody who just went through that process where you're a verbal commit, and some guys are wavering or on the fence, and they put an end to it by signing. So we will see what happens with the Jim Harbaugh situation going forward, and could be recording the Wolverine Recruiting Show next week, and we could know whether or not he's the head coach, if he leaves, if they give him a drop dead date and say either sign or we're going to have to move on, or if he does sign and say, the negotiation's over. So, and that would certainly clear a lot up for some of these recruits if you're looking at it from their standpoint. But let's get into one of those recruits in 2022, a top target, a teammate of Donovan Edwards, 2021 signee, obviously the top running back commit for Michigan there. Athlete Dillon Tatum out of West Bloomfield, a kid that I'm going to see on Saturday at his playoff game, a kid who I really like on either side of the ball, especially on defense, though. Moving around the secondary, making plays, super athletic, and then obviously can play some slot, can play some receiver, play some running back, and I'm sure he'll get more carries if Donovan Edwards ends up not playing since he's enrolling in a couple weeks. But hopefully Edwards will play for the entertainment's sake of it. But Dillon Tatum, Michigan makes his top group. He releases a top 10. Your thoughts on that? I think it's quite obvious that they were going to make the top 10 there, but your feeling on, I guess, where Michigan stands right now.
Yeah, I think with Dillon Tatum, there's a large group in that top schools, like you said, a top 10, but I think the ones that are really standing out are Michigan, Michigan State, and Ohio State. Now, Ohio State obviously recruits the elites of the elites, and I'm not exactly sure how high Dillon stands on that board, but I do know he is a priority target for both Michigan and Michigan State. I think with, like I said, 2022 recruiting kind of taking a backseat, Dillon's been on record saying that Michigan State has been recruiting him a little harder. I think Dillon's one of their top overall priorities, similar to Will and Damani for Michigan. But I also feel like he's still a tier one guy for the Wolverines. Like you said, he's a versatile athlete. He blew up as a running back, but now basically every school is recruiting him on the defensive side of the ball. He's a guy that can play corner, nickel, safety, basically anywhere in the secondary. And, he would be a really good complement to guys like Will Johnson and Damani Jackson because he is a tweener and has position flexibility. Now, I think if Michigan makes a full out push, they should have no problem beating Michigan State due to the program connections. He's very close friends with Donovan Edwards. There was a limited spectators allowed at Donovan Edwards' signee ceremony, and Dillon Tatum was among the people he invited. And so they're very close. Donovan's going to recruit him hard. Obviously,
He
Ron
invited us
Bellamy
too. We were some of the people too.
we did get the invitation, but Ron Bellamy's an ex-Wolverine, obviously the head coach at West Bloomfield. And another guy, Makari Page is currently on the Michigan roster, and Dillon looks up to him as kind of a bit of a mentor, especially now that he's transitioning to being a full-time DB. So with those program connections, the fact that he's been on campus multiple times, actually joined Donovan for the big visit weekend, a couple months ago, I think that, signs point to him eventually signing with Michigan, but of course the Wolverines have to figure out all of this nonsense before they really start generating a lot of momentum on the trail for 2022.
Yeah, and like I alluded to just a little bit ago, it could be over soon because some of those assistant coaches contracts are up on January 11th. But a kid like Dillon Tatum that may or may not be kind of looking for a reason to commit to Michigan right now doesn't have one at this moment, at least because of the uncertainty. But obviously Michigan high up there for him, high up there for some of these other kids, and that's even more reason to get this thing over and done with. But we'll see how it plays out, obviously, and you can follow along the latest with the Jim Harbaugh situation, the latest scoops on Michigan football recruiting at thewolverine.com. Like I said, use that promo code BLUE60. You get 2 months of the premium content for free. So if you see something that you want to read and it's behind the paywall, throw in promo code BLUE60. It's completely free for 2 months. You get instant access to that premium content. We'll see everybody next time.